Hi folks, Adam Andrews here once again with a few thoughts on teaching literature classically. And today I want to discuss the topic of phonetic awareness, which is a concept that I've discussed in other videos, but I wanted to summarize today what phonetic awareness is, why it's important, and how we can teach it effectively in our classrooms. And these comments really apply to classrooms of any size, whether 25 or 30 kids in a brick and mortar school or one kid across the kitchen table from you. So first of all, what is phonetic awareness? We use the term to refer to the sounds of a language, the definitions and pronunciations of individual words. They use the term from the Greek phone, which means sound, and phonetics having to do with putting sounds together into words. So simply put, phonetic awareness is the ability to pronounce and understand the meaning of words. Now, it should be obvious why this is important. In order to read and understand literature at all, you've got to be able to know what the words mean. It's surprisingly, however, difficult to master in some cases. In fact, some lack of phonetic awareness persists even among adult readers, and indeed persists for centuries. A great example comes from Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet. You may know the example that I'm about to give here. Juliet is up on the balcony, having just had an encounter with Romeo, who is to be her lover, and she utters famous words in the moonlight, while unbeknownst to her, Romeo is watching from behind a bush. And she says, and you could probably quote it with me at this point, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Right? And it depends on our level of phonetic awareness how we pronounce Juliet's speech when we are reading it aloud. For example, here's one great way to pronounce Juliet's speech. "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Have you ever said it that way or heard it said that way? If that is the pronunciation you give to Juliet's speech, what does the question mean? Well, of course, it means Romeo, Romeo, where are you, Romeo? Right? And the actress who is pronouncing the sentence this way probably ought to lean over the balcony, as it were, and move her head from side to side and examine the bushes where Romeo is presumably hiding, so that he will come out into the moonlight and they can be joined as lovers. "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" In this sentence, with this level of phonetic awareness of the sentence, the word wherefore is, of course, a synonym for where. Right? Wherefore means where. Except it doesn't, right? We know this, do we not? Wherefore is not a synonym for where, it's a synonym for why. And the correct pronunciation of the sentence is Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? The situation, of course, is that Juliet and Romeo come from warring families who hate each other. And she's saying, in not so many words, "Why is it, Romeo, that you have the name of this family that's at war with mine, and we can never be wed?" Of course, the meaning of the sentence is entirely different depending on your pronunciation of the sentence. And of course, the blocking, if you're an actress, is different too, right? If we're using the second pronunciation, we're not looking over the balcony when playing Juliet. Maybe we have our hands clasped to our breast and we're looking at the moon, supplicant to God that he might change the order of things and bring Romeo across the wall that separates their two families into her arms. So the blocking would probably be different, right? Of course, the understanding and the meaning of the whole scene is different too. The relationship with Romeo and Juliet takes on a new cast when we understand the words correctly. Or, if I could put it this way, when we have a basic phonetic awareness of the language, phonetic awareness of the literature that is in front of us. So as I said, it should be obvious why phonetic awareness is so important. But I'll go further and say that it ought to be the very first job of a lit teacher. In order to foster other kinds of awareness, deeper kinds of awareness, which maybe we'll discuss in detail in other videos, it is necessary, first of all, to attain some level of phonetic awareness of the work before you. So the next question is, how do you teach it? How do you teach phonetic awareness? I think that a concept like this, a kind of awareness, phonetic awareness in this case, is really helpful if it suggests its own pedagogy, if it suggests its own techniques for accumulating it, for mastering it. And it turns out that a technique which involves pronunciation and understanding of words at the vocabulary level suggests a pedagogy almost immediately, which of course is oral reading under the supervision of a teacher. Right? Can you imagine a teacher in a room with a young student reading the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene aloud and watching him as he reads and waiting for him to say, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" And stepping in gently at that point and saying, "Aha, Johnny, it seems to me that the word wherefore in its Elizabethan usage is tripping you up. Let's talk about wherefore and what words it might be a synonym for in this scene and in this sentence." Guided oral reading is a pedagogical technique that fosters phonetic awareness. And at Center for Lit, we would urge all lit teachers at all levels to engage in as much guided oral reading with students as possible. There you go, phonetic awareness and its critical importance to the reading process. I hope this idea is thought-provoking to you, and if you'd like to hear our comments on other kinds of awareness, in particular poetic awareness and pneumatic awareness, then check the videos below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.